Hey there and happy day. I wanted to put together a kind of market overview on a couple of comments that I hear a lot of and some statistics behind them. So, overarching feedback that I get if a buyer loses an offer or is deciding to enter the market when I say, "What do you know about the market?" is that they say there's a lot of cash buyers out there and so many people moving in from out of state, which is why there's very little inventory. I have a couple of nuggets that I pulled out of our MLS report that comes out monthly. So our May report just came out, and some stuff that I thought you would find really interesting. So fact number one, of all of the transactions that happen here in the Valley, 20% of them are cash buyers, which means 80% of transactions are not cash buyers, they're financed buyers. So the misconception that I'm always going to lose out because of cash buyers is 20% of the time you might against cash, but the other 80% of the time they are financed buyers who are looking to buy a home the traditional route. Now, what I thought was really interesting, kind of going back to some comments I get, are that because they're coming with all this money from out of state, they're pricing me out, and there's nothing going to be available because they're selling at California prices and buying here at Arizona prices, which are just so much cheaper. Here's an interesting fact. If you look at people in the state of Arizona who are buying houses in the state of Arizona, that median price point is $380. If you look at the people buying in Arizona from out of state, now this data is tracked through some closing docs that the state of Arizona requires an affidavit of occupancy or something, that gives the address of where they were when they bought the house and then their intended use of that property. So people who bought in the state of Arizona that had a California address, their median sales price was $455. So our Arizona residents median price was $380 and the out of state was $455, which challenges thinking a little bit, right? That means if you're buying an average home here in Arizona, your typical competitor is not a California buyer. It's when you get into a slightly higher price bracket that we're seeing, and I've been using the term California, that's because that's 6% of our transactions in May went to people with California addresses, meaning 94% were not Californians. But with that being said, right, that tells us that they're shopping at a slightly higher price point. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because I always hear, well, Californians are buying at their high price points because it's, a steal for them compared to there. Here's what's interesting. Compared to our out-of-state shoppers, Californians are actually buying more affordable houses. People from Washington, Colorado, and Illinois, on average, were buying more expensive homes than people coming here from California. So I thought that was interesting. And then last but not least, when we talk about a bubble, a real estate bubble, I get to refer back to 2005, 6, and then eventually 7, when there was a large chunk of properties that were being purchased as rental properties, but were never being rented out. And so what was happening is that people were essentially buying these properties as pieces of their portfolio to eventually flip and sell them, assuming that the market would continue to go up in perpetuity. They weren't really needing tenants. They were just holding on to it as an appreciating asset to later sell. Not the same situation. In general, occupancy is through the roof compared to back then, and I won't go down that rabbit hole, but here's what I thought was interesting. 85% of our transactions are being sold to people who are either owner occupants or they're buying it for a second home. Most of the out-of-state people were 45% of our out-of-state people were buying them as second homes, but the other ones were actually moving here. So if 85% of all transactions were going to someone who was going to be living here in some capacity, ipso facto, the other 15% were identified as rental properties, meaning these aren't investors who are just coming in and snatching everything up. These aren't artificial numbers because we're in a boom with, vacancy rates being really high. This is real data showing us that supply and demand is a very real thing, right? Our demand is sky high, our supply is very low. So what you need in that situation is the ability to negotiate on the buy side at a very strong competitive route, which works for any buyer in any situation with the right clarity and education. And as a seller, that means having a really solid menu of services to be able to help you make that very smooth transition from selling your house to buying your house. So let's recap some stats because I know I got really nerdy on you. 20% of our transactions are cash, meaning the other 80% are financed. Californians purchasing here account for 6% of transactions. It's nothing to shake a stick at. That's a decent chunk of real estate, but we can't go about this saying like, well, Californians are buying up all the houses. That's just incorrect. We are learning that they're buying more expensive houses than our Arizona residents. But we're learning that those Californians are actually purchasing more affordable properties compared to their counterparts coming from Washington, Illinois, and Colorado. And lastly, what we know are that 85% of these homes are being sold to people who will be living in them in some capacity, either as an owner-occupant or as a second home. Meaning 15% are being sold as rental properties or purchased as rental properties. And what does that mean? If you're going to be buying, you need to be very competitive and prepared for a battle to find that right house for you. And if you're selling, it means you just need an agent with a strong plan to get you from selling to purchase. Now, if that's you and you need to talk to someone about that, of course, we'd be honored to help. I'm Kelly Henderson with Momentum Real Estate Group, and I hope this info was helpful. Have a great day. Bye-bye.